Welcome to the podcast. Most people don't, but you do. I am thrilled to be able to introduce a really fun, unique, creative gentleman. His name is Professor Mike Orkin. We're going to call him Dr. Mike, Dr. Orkin, Professor Mike. We're probably going to use a whole bunch of terms to describe this gentleman. I will read a little bit about what he is doing in his background and why we wanted him to be on this podcast. My name is Bart Berkey, of course, the host. Our podcast is ranked consistently between the top 2 to 5% globally. We're going to let a lot of people know what Professor Mike has been up to, and we're going to celebrate his new book. A little bit about his background. So he is a distinguished professor, statistician, consultant, researcher, and author whose work focuses on how chance, probability, and randomness shape real outcomes in life. Super smart gentleman, BA in mathematics and a PhD in statistics from the University of California, Berkeley, and is a professor of mathematics at Berkeley City College, as well as professor of statistics. He has a new book, most recently called The Story of Chance, What's Luck Got to Do with It? The Story of Chance, What's Luck Got to Do with It? He's a nationally known authority on probability, games of chance, decision-making under uncertainty, consulting for the gaming industry, published, widely received as an authority. And we're thrilled that you're joining us all the way from California this morning. Thank you, Professor Mike.
Thank you, Bart. I'm happy to be here. One quick minor correction. The new edition of my book is called The Story of Chance Beyond the Margin of Error.
The Story of Chance. Got it. So you have several books, correct?
Yeah, but yes, and this is so what you announced was The Story of Chance, What's Luck Got to Do with It, which is essentially the same book, but this is the new edition, which has The Story of Chance Beyond the Margin of Error, which has a bunch of new interesting stories in it.
The Story of Chance, Beyond the Margin of Error, second edition, my apologies, by Michael Orkin, Professor Mike. Okay, our listeners are all over the world, and they like to learn things that they would not normally learn from other podcasts. And we also like to discuss how do and why do people like yourself do what most people don't do. I'm going to start at somewhat of the beginning, Professor Mike. Your background in statistics, your degrees in teaching and consulting, what made you interested in the study of probability and chance?
It's an interesting story. What made me interested was because of a random event. I went to Cal Berkeley and I was a math major and I was an undergraduate. I was planning to go to work for a computer company when I graduated. I worked at IBM in Washington, D.C. in the summers. So I was planning to go back there or to go to another affiliate or IBM has offices all over the world. But then I took a probability course when I was a senior, and as luck would have it, as we like to say, my professor, I really liked it. I was really enjoying the course, one of my favorite courses, and the professor asked me if I wanted to go to graduate school in the statistics department. And so I didn't know about two things. I didn't know about graduate school, and I didn't know about the statistics department. I was just a math major waiting to graduate and go to work somewhere. I got into graduate school, and that's how I became a major in probability and statistics and game theory. That was my topic for a thesis. And then the rest is history, so to speak. When I graduated, I got a job as a professor at California State University in Hayward at the time it was called. It's now called Cal State East Bay. And then started getting some consulting jobs over the years, but then in recent years, since apps have become popular on smartphones like the iPhone or the Android, there are a lot of game developers who develop games. And one of the things that some of the developers want to do, this has been particularly true in sports betting, is want to have wagering allowed. And in order to allow wagering, and things are loosening up a little bit, but in order to allow wagering, you have to show that the game, the developers have to show that the game that they're trying to get up online is a game of skill or a skill-based game rather than a game of chance. And so there are various definitions for that. But one of the things that they do is they get someone like me to write a report which sort of authenticates it, gives my blessing that this is really a skill-based game. So I've been doing a lot of consulting in that space over the last
Yeah.
few
And
years.
what excites you about the world of statistics and all the things that you are studying and probability? You could have gone and done anything, Professor Mike, but it looks like you've written books, second edition books now. You've written books. What excites you about the study of probability and chance?
So some of it's just being personally interested, and I can't even explain why, but the notion of how chance is part of our everyday lives, especially in the business world, and how you have to take risks, these kinds of things really interested me. When computers started getting popular on a personal level, personal PCs, personal computers came out, I was involved with some friends in developing some software. So I'm also interested in software, but it turns out that one of the things that I don't know that interests me a lot is just how randomness and chance enters into just about everything. Sometimes we don't even know it. For example, we don't worry about getting run over by a bus when we walk across the street because the chance is so low, especially if we're paying doing. But there is some non-zero probability that will happen. So the question is, when does this very small probability become important enough to worry about or enough to be happy about? Because it's not just bad things happening, there's good luck too, and good things happen, especially if you wait long enough. And so one of the things that has interested me is how to measure and anticipate when the good things will happen.
Yeah.
Of course, most of the things that we do, business world and in the sports world, I want to include one of the most important areas that I've been interested in is the world of medicine and biology, which is part of the business world. And so one of the things that's very important that people don't realize is how much chance plays a role and how much people can get fooled by things that appear to be, for example, cause and effect relationships. We're hardwired ever since we were from thousands and thousands of years ago when we had to, before we were civilized and had to live out in the wilderness somewhere, we had to make quick decisions. Does the rustling in the weeds mean that a lion is about to attack? So the association is what does rustling in the weeds mean? So we had to make these associations.
Mhm.
And that nowadays it's more academic, but we can talk about what the correlations between things mean.
Yeah.
So let me give you an example, or do you want me to?
Yeah, no, like, just pause right there, but I'm really curious. Is it all about numbers?
In a sense, it is because that's how we measure things. Life itself, even if we go on to the quantum level of subatomic particles, which completely change the way physicists and us indirectly look at the world, when we talk about quantum computers, it's all about measuring things. Now, it's people who measure things. My cat is not going to measure anything with numbers, but my cat knows how to jump up on an incredibly small ledge without falling over. And so my cat is using a similar, shall I say, a similar method of deciding what to do, namely being able to gauge things and measure things, maybe not with numbers, but for us, for people, numbers is how we measure things.
Okay.
Uh,
All right, got it. And so we talked a little bit briefly about gaming and how you were helping providing information to casinos. Let's talk about success in business. I know there's a lot of uncertainty in the world. What is happening with this and politically and geographically and economically and all of the different, there's a lot of uncertainty. And what I spend my time, Professor Mike, doing besides the podcast is traveling and speaking inspiration in good thoughts with people. So if we think just in general that there is uncertainty in the world right now, is there something that they could apply to make sure that, and this is from, let's say, just from a business perspective, what can they use that they can apply to be more successful in business? We'll start there.
Okay, there are two things that are tied together, and then I'll mention some examples in the medical side of things or the biology side of things. But first, there's sort of two things that people use to measure whether an activity is good, and if so, how much money you should put into it. And so there's something called EV. E stands for expected value, which is really just an average. And there's a famous mathematical law called the law of averages, sometimes called the law of large numbers, which is it's been around for a couple hundred years. And it says, basically, if you're doing the same thing over and over again, like if you're starting a business, you're going to have repetitive tasks. You're going to be taking the same, people don't generally think about this so much, but you're going to be taking the same kind of risks every day. And so it's good to think about things as what is this thing I'm doing every day that has risk in it? And so the law of averages says that if you are doing something over and over again, and things can get more general, but I'm just going to describe this in an intuitive way. If you're doing something over and over again independently, so what you do today isn't really affected by what you did yesterday that much, but that doesn't mean that you can't be slowly succeeding or whatever. Then what your average is or what your chances are of succeeding today will take place on the average if you do the thing over and over again. Let me give you an example.
Yeah.
So the easiest way to understand this kind of mathematical law is looking at dice games or looking at casino games. So if I roll a pair of dice, there are different numbers. Here's, I have a die here I can show you. In the casino game, you roll a pair of dice.
Okay.
And there are numbers from 1 to 6 dots on the die. So if I put two dice together, which happens in the game of craps, and I roll them, I can get any combination if I'm adding up the numbers from 2 to 12. So you could go in a casino and bet that 7 will come up. And so you can figure out just by counting the combinations that there are 6 out of 36 ways that 7 can come up. So my chance of winning a bet on 7 is 1/6. Okay, so what? My chance is 6 out of 36 that 7 will come up. So what? Maybe I can get lucky and win, or maybe I'll get unlucky and lose. But what's that really telling me? The law of averages tells me that if I do this, if I make this bet over and over, then over time, the fraction of times that I actually win the bet is about 1/6, which is exactly the chance that it happens on one roll. So there's great uncertainty from roll to roll.
Yes. No matter how long you do it for, correct? You could bet for an hour, you could bet for 24 hours, but it's still going to be, the opportunity is still 1/6 based on the law of averages.
Right. Yeah. No, the chance is always 1/6 based on just rolling a pair of dice.
Oh,
But
okay.
what happens, the law of averages says that if you keep doing it, then 7 will come up about 1/6 of the time. So it ties what one roll tells you, which is just uncertainty, to an actual, it gets rid of the randomness, a stable result over time. So you can use that information to say that if you have repeated trials of something and you're doing something over and over again, then in the long run, you can figure out what's going to happen. So you might be, if you're doing something that has a negative average, which happens in these casino games, you'll lose in the long run. But if you have a positive EV, so to speak, you'll win in the long run.
Okay, Professor Mike, let me see if I,
that.
it's so fascinating. And I know I am not nearly as smart as you, and I want to make sure that I am understanding it so our listeners are able to understand and gather some great value from this. What you just shared, if I'm rolling dice, I have a 1 in 6 opportunity. If I roll it once, the opportunity or the randomness, the opportunity, what word did you say, is 1 out of 6?
You can say the chance or the probability.
Okay, the chance or probability of rolling it once, 1 out of 6. Now I might be lucky, I might be unlucky, but the law of averages share that the more that I do it, eventually it will come out to be the average of 1 out of 6.
Correct.
And the law of averages, could the law of averages be, and I'm just trying to formulate this, could it be Could it take 24 hours of gambling and rolling dice to hit the law of average? Could it take 17 years of rolling the dice to hit the law of averages?
That's a great question. That's a really, really interesting and important question. And you can figure that out. When doing things like rolling dice, you can figure out how long it takes to have that 1/6 number really happen. It's never exactly 1/6, but it's real close to it. So
Yes.
as time goes on, as the number of bets goes on, then your fraction of wins gets closer and closer to 1/6, and that little interval around the fraction of 1/6 gets smaller and smaller.
So just from a time element, you might be rolling and your law of averages hits 1/6 probability in an hour, maybe. I could do it for 24 hours and it would take 24 hours until I can hit that 1/6 probability, correct?
Until you're saying the right thing, but the fraction of times that you win is
Yeah.
becomes that probability.
Yeah.
So
So
what
it's,
actually happens to
yeah.
you, forget about becomes the probability after a
Okay.
while. So you have no longer any uncertainty.
It becomes at a certain point, it becomes the probability. It happens at a
Yeah.
certain point. Now,
It,
the length of
it,
time varies.
it varies, but that's correct. But let me just make what you said a little bit clearer, and that is, after a while, it doesn't become exactly 1/6, but the interval around that fraction get closer and closer to 1/6. And so
Okay.
if I but in this game, if I'm rolling dice and bet that seven will come up, then that'll happen about 1/6 of the time. And if I just make about a few hundred bets, it'll be close. I can be pretty sure that the fraction of times I win the bet will be close to 1/6. That's how to say it. But
If you make several hundred bets.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
and I can make that precise by saying that if I make several hundred bets, the interval around 1/6 gets smaller, and I can tell you how small that interval is. So that means 1/6 plus or minus 1%, or plus or minus a half a percent. And
Okay.
so I know what that means is, since you get paid 4-to-1 payoff odds when you bet on number seven, and that means that for every time you win, you get $4 for every dollar you bet, and when you lose the dollar, so you make 4/6 minus 5/6, which is a chance you lose, which is minus 1/6. So that means you lose 17 cents per dollar bet in the long run. So that's what I mean by EV. What happens in the long run? And
Yes.
what you're getting at is very important, and that is, what does the long run mean?
Yes.
If it means today, if I just make 100 bets or so, which is not that hard to do in a casino, then I better worry about it. But if I can get lucky and then quit or something like that, and I don't have to worry about the law of averages for another month, then it's not so important.
Yeah.
And so
So
the
you
notion
can
of the long run,
yes, sir.
that's
Yeah. Yeah. So you can beat the law of averages short term. Maybe you can beat the law of averages
by
if
being lucky in this
yeah,
example.
by being lucky. I'm going to do air quotes by being lucky, or you can continue to roll 100 times and eventually, hopefully, meet the law of averages. And based on all the things, what money can be won, what money can be lost if we're actually betting. I think I understand all
Well,
of
so
those.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So in a game like craps, which is my example here, betting on number seven, then it's a game of pure chance. There's no skill in rolling dice. People come in and they cheat. They have loaded dice and stuff. But if you're just rolling dice in a fair game, then after a while, luck disappears, and
Mhm.
your results can be predicted
Yeah.
very precisely. And I can make that prediction
Yeah.
very precisely.
Yeah.
Now,
Luck disappears and your results become predictable. That's what you said. Luck disappears,
right.
results become predictable. And you can show that statistically and mathematically and behavior, like no question. Once you could either be lucky or you can be, when your luck runs out, you become then predictable. Or I guess if your luck runs out, over the length of time, you can still become predictable. So you're either lucky or you're not lucky, but regardless, you will be predictable.
And if you do the same thing over and over again independently. So
Yes.
so sometimes situations aren't quite like that, but you can
Mhm.
still use that as a guide. And notice that what I'm talking about is a game of pure chance. So if you're
Mhm.
doing something like playing football,
Yes.
that's not a game of pure chance. There's a chance element involved. So as time goes on, you can start out being terrible, but if you're gifted in that sport, you'll get better and better. So
Yeah.
it's only games of chance where things are you're either lucky in the beginning or you're not lucky or you're
Yes.
unlucky.
Okay. Let's see. How can we apply this theory of probability and chance going back to professional success? Let's say I start a restaurant or I start a new business. And I know that the probability for, and maybe you know what this is, new businesses starting out, if you survive past 3 years or something like that, you are anticipated at least to be able to go until 10 years or something like that. And 20% of all new restaurants that open up fail within the first year. And I'm making up some of these things, but
Right,
are you
right.
familiar with statistics like this? So let's think about that element of starting a new business.
Okay.
The probability of me coming, my background, Professor Mike, I was in the hospitality world for a long time. Pandemic hit, things changed. I realized that I had value in helping people deal with uncertainty by pulling in good stories, good messages, positivity, inspiration, and ways of being able to feel better, do better, and get better. So that was my whole concept. We're 7 years in, and I have been doing different things to be able to make sure that we are successful. We keep on growing year after year. That's just my example. If someone today would start a new business, can we think about the probability and chance of what are the things that they need to do when starting a business to be successful, to make revenue, to be able to hire a team, to be doing good for other people? Is there a way that we can think about that?
Yeah, so first of all, and I want to introduce another game, one that you're familiar with, I'm sure, the game of 21 or blackjack, but I'll do that in a second. But first, be in whatever business you're in, try to eliminate the stuff that's just involving luck. Try to find things that you're skilled at and do that, because then over time, you don't have to worry about being lucky. You can use your skill. That's one of the reasons that banks don't like to support app games that don't involve skill, because if everyone's either just lucky or unlucky, they run into problems. But let's look at the game of blackjack or
Yeah.
21, because that's a game that for been around. Card games like that have been around for hundreds of years, and that game, which is now a very popular casino game, was always thought of as a game of chance. The cards, you shuffle the deck and you deal the cards, it's all luck. So then in the late 1950s, some computer programmers at IBM, funny that I was working at IBM around that time, a little bit later than that, but anyway, some computer programmers in New York at IBM had started doing some simulations. Simulations means like playing the game over and over again, but on a computer, of the game of blackjack. And they made this weird discovery. And that discovery is that if you keep track of the cards as they come out of the deck, what happens to you when you're playing that game can change, and that you have some control over it, and it can become a game of skill.
Okay.
And so this was done in an atmosphere of computer programming and simulations, and the people who did this were what we would call nerds, not really that interested in going out and trying to explain things to the general public. But a math professor at UC Irvine named Ed Thorpe wrote a book in 1962 called Beat the Dealer. Beat the Dealer means you win at blackjack in the casino. And in that book, he described in everyday terms, you still have to do a little bit of work. You have to memorize cards as they come out of the deck, types of cards. And if that's the case, if you can do that strategy, then you're using skill. You're not just leaving it up to luck, and you can win in the long run. You have positive EV, which is much more important to people who are starting business than negative EV. So the first thing you have to do is figure out if you've got a game that you're going to win in the long run, possibly. if you're good at it.
Yeah.
And so in Thorpe's game, you have to play it. You have to be very good at memorizing types of cards, and you have to play for a long time. And because the good situations don't come up that often. There was a movie made, I think, in 2008 called 21, a Hollywood movie with Kevin Spacey and a bunch of other famous A-list actors. And it was about a blackjack scheme that was originally started by this friend of mine. But anyway, so here's the thing. So I'm circling back to your question.
Yeah, good.
Here's the thing. Suppose you're the world's greatest blackjack expert. And of course, the casinos changed the rules and stuff because they don't want games with positive expected value or average for the player. So anyway, suppose you're a good blackjack player, you have a positive game and you will win in the long run. Suppose you think this is fantastic. So you start betting, and each time you play, on each hand, you might have a sort of overall, maybe a 51% chance of winning and 49% chance of losing, which gives you a good game. But you have to do it for a while. But suppose every time you play, you bet everything you have, all your money that you have available, known in the casino as your bankroll, business as your bankroll. What's going to happen? You have a good game, a positive game, but you're going to go broke quickly because as soon as you lose, then you're going to win and lose. As soon as you lose, you get wiped out. So that brings up this whole new area, and that is a whole different line of thought, which is, okay, I've got a good game. How much should I bet? How much should I invest? And just because you have positive EV, okay, that's great. Even if you're skilled, how much should you invest? So that's a different question.
Yeah.
So someone around the same time as Thorpe, his name was Kelly, figured that out. It's called the Kelly system. Now people use it in various areas, not just playing blackjack. The Kelly system says that whatever you do, if you have a good game, whether you're skilled or unskilled or whatever, you should, when you're making bets, and a bet is the same thing as an investment, but investment's on a longer term. You should always bet a fixed fraction of your bankroll, which means the more you have, the more you bet. The less you have, the less you bet. So that means if you have a lot of money, you can bet more, invest more. If you're just starting up and have a small amount of money, you shouldn't do that. You should only bet a fraction of the amount that you have. And so that's called the Kelly system, and it's an optimal system. In fact, a book was written. In fact, Ed Thorpe wrote another book, which was followed by about 10 other books written by different authors about the same topic, called Beat the Market. The market being the stock market and the other financial markets. Yeah. And the topic of that book was really this Kelly system of always bet a fixed fraction of your bankroll, which means you never double down. You never do things like say, uh-oh, I've lost. I got to bet more money to cover my losses. So that's a rule for someone who just, that's back to your question.
Yes.
That's one basic rule. And that is never double down. You have to have nerves of steel to be a success, but just keep going and don't. If you have some unfortunate losses, that does not mean you should bet more. You should bet less.
And Professor Mike, there's so many life elements of what you're just sharing. It's not just about gambling. As an example, I'm not a gambler, but I'm learning from you. Our listeners, even if they're not gamblers, are learning from you and how I could equate what you just said based on the theories and those gentlemen, the experts, that if I'm starting a business, I could have skill. I believe I'm a good facilitator. I'm a good presenter. So just having good skill is not enough. And it's a real interesting story. And I'll share with you, when COVID happened, things were different. Jobs were being lost. People were being furloughed. That's when I decided, you know what? I'm going to bet on me, which is strange to even say that. I'm betting on me because I don't know what's happening with hospitality and with travel, but I know people need to hear good messages. So I bet on me. And Professor Mike, what I did was I was very fortunate. I had stock from my prior company work, and I sold stock to be able to get a runway. So that was my investment. And I did not spend additional money. I didn't hire additional people. I didn't hire an assistant. I didn't hire a social media person. I was investing little by little in me in the business with those constant efforts, not just skill, and the skill not of just having the message and being able to speak, but the skill of being able to have resources and have great friends and have great mentors and have people recommend me and having a good reputation. So it wasn't just my skill, it was skill of those around me. So it was that storm was leading to greater success. And if I continue to do the good things every single day, I believe I'm following you, the effort every single day, making the phone calls, reaching out, giving away free messages if I need to, being on a podcast. We're not paid for this podcast typically, but giving these things away to help people. And then someone's going to hear it and they're going to say, you know what? Oh, Professor Mike was so cool. I want to buy his book. I want to bring him into my town to be able to speak. I want him to come to my casino and talk to us. Or I want to hire Bart to be a keynote speaker, or I want to sponsor his podcast. So I'm just trying to equate. Am I missing anything from a fundamental perspective?
No, well, actually, from a fundamental perspective, you're basically, without talking about the math part of it,
Yeah.
are talking about a good strategy. Namely, your outlook is one of slowly growing your brand, and not freaking out if something goes wrong, not doubling down if you have a loss, but just slowly getting more people around you, getting good people, and slowly building. And that's pretty much the message of the Kelly system, in a sense.
Yes.
Is that you don't. And a famous statistician before my time named John Tukey made this statement about what you're talking about. He said, the definition of an expert is someone who thinks with other people's brains. And what that means is you get good people around you. You can't just know it alone like the crap's better. When you do that, you have a much higher chance of success. Let me give you another story. Go ahead. You were about to say something.
Oh, no, run with your story. I have plenty more questions for you if you're okay on time. You okay on time?
Okay. This is a story from the crypto world. If you're familiar at all with cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and things like that, Ethereum, you've heard of Sam Bankman-Fried, otherwise known as SBF. He was known as the crypto king for a while. He started a very large crypto exchange, and there was a book written about him by a guy whose pen name is Zeke Foe, and he wrote a book called Number Go Up, and it was based on a bunch of interviews with Sam Bankman-Fried. Sam Bankman-Fried was a guy who was an MIT graduate in physics and math, and he was very smart. He knew all the rules about positive EV. And so according to this book, he was completely in the crypto world. He was a billionaire before he was 30. And he would write, according to this book, he would write math formulas for computing EV, which is expected value or average, for all these different crypto bets that he thought of or was exposed to during a day, write them all down, compute EV, and if the EV was positive, he would make huge bets. And so sometimes that's called investments in crypto. And so he didn't know about the Kelly system, and he wound up losing, even though he had positive EV, losing huge amounts of money that he couldn't afford to lose. And that led him to borrowing money from his investors, who didn't know that he was borrowing money from them. And right now he's in prison. He was sharing a cell with Diddy for a while. And I'm not sure where he is, but
he was able to use EV, the law of averages, to be able to calculate probability with investments on certain things. But what he did not do was abide by the Kelly method, and he was over investing. As he was making more money or less money, he was continuing to overinvest and overspend, essentially. So the overall, in the law of averages, if you're spending more, that's what led to the downfall. Did I get it right?
Yes, that's about right. So what led to his downfall? Well, there are other things that led to his downfall. The main point of this book was that he was he was using positive EV knowing he had good games, good bets, and just thinking, okay, all I got to do is bet everything on all these good bets and I'll be making tons of money, which isn't true, because every now and then you have a big loss. And if you have a bunch of big losses, even if you have a good game like blackjack, you'll go broke, which is what he did, but he didn't believe in going broke. So he managed to raise money from nefarious sources. And so anyway, that's the story of his demise.
Yeah.
Now,
Moderation. We're learning moderation.
People use the Kelly system for the stock market all the time. It's been around for a while. It's been very successful, but it's complicated because it's not like going into a casino and rolling a pair of dice. Investing in stocks or bonds or other things is much more complicated. But still, the basic idea is what I've been talking about.
Yeah. I just have about 3 more questions for you, okay, Professor Mike? Are you able to use your knowledge of statistical things and the outcome and randomness and all of the lovely things that you are studying in probability? Are you able to use those tools for you personally? Meaning, are you a gambler?
I used to play blackjack, but I'm not a gambler. I'm not that type of a gambler anymore. But there are a few things that I use personally. One of them is this Kelly system. And I used to not understand what a good bet meant in terms of investment. And so definitely, even if it's not, as you pointed out, it's not necessarily just about numbers. It's just about a way of thinking about things.
Yeah.
There are some other examples too. I don't know how much time we have, but involving like lotteries and things like that. But
and this is totally off the cuff or rather irregular, but you hear of individuals that are predicting the numbers or predicting the future and mentalists. If they know these things, why don't you give yourself the number to the lotto, to Powerball?
But that brings up another issue, and that is, are these people really able to predict things? And so back in the mid 1900s, the 1950s, 60s, 70s, when this type of thing was maybe more popular than it is now, mentalists and psychic powers and things like that, there was a laboratory at Duke University that was started by a professor named Rhine, J.B. Rhine, Rhinne. I hope I'm spelling it right. Anyway, he started this lab, and it flourished back then. And it was a lab that mainly tested people for psychic powers. And there was something called the Zener card test, Zener, started by, I guess, invented by someone named Zener. But basically, like, you, the researcher, sit at a desk, and the person who claims to have psychic power sits in front of you, and there's an opaque barrier between you. And let's just say you have 2 cards with a circle and with a square. And there you go, just like that. And so you hold up one of the cards, either a circle or a square, and the person sitting behind you has to figure out mentally which one it is. And so if you can't do it, so if you just do it once, if you have a 50-50 chance of being right. So that's not a good thing to do, good way to do it. You have to do it a bunch of times. But if you do it, say, 100 times, then you can measure statistically if how low the chance has to be. This is all part of basic statistical stuff. Or you to say, oh, this person's doing better than just guessing. So they identified lots of people who were doing better statistically. It's called statistically significant.
Okay.
Better than just guessing. So when they did the Zener card test, now there were various versions of it, but the one I described is one of them. Okay, that seems like there are a bunch of people who have psychic powers. But the problem is that if you test enough people, then the statistical rule that you're using to decide when someone's doing better than guessing goes out the window, because statistically significant usually means the chance that you did this just by guessing is less than 0.05 or 5%.
Okay.
So that's called that's generally accepted these days in the social sciences and everything. Business, political science. Now, what does that mean? It means the chance is less than 0.05 that you do this just by guessing. And so the conclusion is you're not doing it just by guessing. you've got some kind of powers, or you're cheating, but we won't talk about that. So at this lab at Duke University, which they still have these, they still do this. Berkeley has a place called the Berkeley Psychic Institute, but this was the most popular place. So there was an article, I bring this up in my book. There was an article in the New York Times, and when they went back and they looked at some of these things, and it turns out that there's a general fact that you have to, another one of these basic things that people need to be aware of, and that is, if you test enough people, then there'll be some people who look like they have psychic powers from a statistical point of view, but really they're just lucky because.
Wow. So the law of averages.
Yeah. There's
law of averages again.
Yeah. So that 0.05 number means 5 out of 100, right? So there's a 5% chance that you're just guessing when you say this person's. So if you just do it with one person, not a big deal. You can retest them and whatever. If you're doing it with 100 people a day, you're going to get a whole bunch of. Now in medicine, that's has a name: false positive.
False positive. It's fascinating. I just want to go back to understanding. So the more people that they were able to put through this test, like what color, what shape am I looking at? The more people that they went through, the more that they found that there was not real significance in skill. However, the people that were guessing it most likely were lucky.
In fact, that's the second thing you said is exactly right.
Okay.
If you test enough people, then there'll be some people who just got lucky.
Okay.
They did not have psychic powers. But that only works if you test a lot of people. The luck is a group activity. Whether for every lucky winner, there are a bunch of unlucky losers if nobody has any skill. But that's the same phenomenon you get with the lottery. The Mega Millions lottery played in just about every state in the U.S. And I won't go through the details, but the chance that you win is about 1 in 290 million. Now, what does that mean? That's a very low number, right? And it's all chance. There's no skill in picking lottery numbers, despite what the psychics say. If you buy 50 tickets a week, what does 1 in 290 million mean? It means if you buy 50 tickets a week, you'll win on the average of once every 112,000 years. If you have to drive a mile every time you buy a Mega Millions ticket, go down to the mini market, you'll win the jackpot. The amount of time, the amount of mileage you'll have to do on the average to win the jackpot is 608 round trips to the moon. And so the point is, 1 in 290 million means very unlikely for.
Yes, very unlikely. Okay, but one person wins.
But there are winners. Not every drawing, that's right. But every couple of weeks there's a winner. And so the answer is because, as I said, luck is a group activity, and it's because so many tickets are sold. So many people buy tickets to play the Mega Millions lottery that just by that group of people, someone will get lucky.
Someone has to get lucky.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't change your probability. It doesn't matter what you do. Your chance of winning is 1 in 290 million.
Yeah,
but
and their chances also, Professor Mike, was 1 in 290 million.
So the correct probability, or the correct chance that you should be thinking of is not the chance that you win, but the chance that someone wins.
Okay.
And that number goes up as more tickets are sold.
Got it. And so why not, Professor Mike? Why not me? Why not me? And we're going to conclude here in a moment, but why not me? I'm a good person. I would give it away. I would pay off my mother's house. I would buy her a car. Why not me? Why can't I be lucky? And we're going to conclude with this. I would love your opinion. Statistical, mathematic, doctor, professor, where does the element of, we'll just touch upon this, intention, the universe, divine intervention, just your personal opinion. Do you believe that there is something greater than us? And I'm not talking, I guess I am talking religion. I'm talking spirituality. Why do you think some people are lucky and others aren't?
I don't think it has anything to do with spirituality. I think it just, and I'm a spiritual person, but I think it just has to do with the math. Namely, everybody is a good person in their eyes, Everybody who buys a lottery ticket thinks, I'm the one who should win because I'm going to do all these great things if I
Yeah.
win.
Yes.
All 300 million people who buy tickets. And it's true, someone will win, but not everybody can win. Only one out of every 290 million.
Yes.
And spirituality just doesn't enter into the equation of why someone wins the lottery. It's something you have to get used to, is not the chance that you win, but the chance that someone wins.
Mm-hmm.
And that chance goes up the more tickets that are sold.
Yes. I'd like to make a bet with you that someone will win the next Powerball. You agree? You want to bet with me?
Yeah, probably someone will, but certainly within the next few Powerball drawings, maybe not
Yeah.
the next.
Last question for you, and this has been really fascinating, Professor Mike, and truly appreciate it. We are talking with Dr. Mike Orkin, author, PhD statistics, University of California, Berkeley, professor of statistics, emeritus at California State University, just so many things. Second edition of his book, The Story of Chance, second edition by Dr. Mike Orkin. There was one other component, The Story of Chance. What was the
Beyond the margin of error?
Beyond a margin of error. Last question for you. I believe when we are speaking to people and making them feel good and comfortable and motivating, and we are doing the right actions for the right reasons, I do believe that there's an element of intention and manifestation. That if I do the right things, if I'm envisioning the right things, if I am reading the right things, if I'm saying the right things and reading the right books, the element of intention and manifestation. What's your opinion on that? Does that influence success? Does that influence probability? Does that influence happiness?
I think it does, and one of the reasons I think it does influence the things that you mentioned is because if you're doing those things, you're also using smart strategies, smart mathematical strategies. You're forcing yourself to do the right thing mathematically when you're doing the right thing spiritually. So the two things merge together.
Phenomenal. Oh my gosh, what a great conversation. I always ask our listeners, our guests rather, to share with the listeners, can you fill in the blank? Most people don't blank. What comes immediately to mind?
Most people don't blank.
Most people don't, then fill in the blank.
Most people don't understand some of the basic laws of chance that we've discussed today, because I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Most people don't understand the odds, and
we
you
didn't,
can certainly learn.
Discuss things like correlation, which maybe we'll do in a future date.
And honestly, you have brought up some things that I never thought. I'm curious. I'm a curious person, but you were able to bring up things, Dr. Mike, with things that I never thought would even be applicable for this conversation. I am so incredibly grateful. Our listeners are they're going to be thrilled to be able to hear this conversation. We will celebrate this to all of our followers and all of our listeners. And if they would like to purchase the book, remind me, what is the best website for you?
I'm on Amazon. You can go to Amazon, look Amazon Books, and my book is listed in Amazon Books. It looks like this. They have a picture of it, The Story of Chance, Beyond the Margin of Error. Now, I also have a website. It's drmikeorkin.com, and doctor is DR, so the abbreviation. drmikeorkin.com. You can get I have a link to Amazon on that, plus some of the other things I do, including Substack.
Amazing. Professor Mike, Dr. Orkin, thank you so much for sharing incredible ideas. Orkin is spelled Orkin. We'll make sure that we have some links in the show notes. What a pleasure being able to speak with such a unique, creative, smart, intelligent gentleman. What a pleasure. Thank you again, Professor Mike.
Thank you, Bart.